Hello and welcome. This time around, we are talking about Cenozoic life, so life in the modern era. We're finally going to be talking about the organisms that we look around and see around us today, including humans, including ourselves. So, Cenozoic life and human origins. To remind ourselves, the Cenozoic is the modern era, the most recent era after the Mesozoic, which was the era of the dinosaurs. And it contains three periods: the Paleogene, Neogene, and Quaternary, and several epochs: Paleocene, Eocene, Oligocene, Miocene, Pliocene, Pleistocene, and Holocene. And a lot of these figures, you'll see Holocene as being the modern epoch, but arguably we've actually entered a new one, the Anthropocene. So we know way more about Cenozoic life than we do about life on any other era ever to exist on Earth. And this makes a lot of sense. One, it's because the material, the fossils, the organisms are younger, so it's had less time to be destroyed, right? The longer a fossil exists, the more likely it is to be broken apart, subducted beneath the earth, weathered away. So younger fossils are more likely to still be around for us to find. And then secondly, we know more about Cenozoic life because it's more closely related to what we see around us today, right? Even if organisms had gone extinct during the Cenozoic, they probably have very similar body forms, body functions. They still look very similar to life as we know it today. And because we understand life today, it's easy to interpret what life was like earlier in the Cenozoic as well. So let's talk about how life went from the Mesozoic life to Cenozoic life, the age of the reptiles and the dinosaurs to the age of the mammals today. Okay? Let's first talk about what happened to those reptiles. Okay. So Cenozoic reptiles, crocodilians, including crocodiles, alligators, caimans, are archosaurs that began their evolution during the Triassic, and they were around the same time as the dinosaurs. So crocodilians actually lived with dinosaurs. And by the end of the Mesozoic, even though the dinosaurs and all other marine and flying reptiles had gone extinct, the crocodilians stuck around. And the crocodilians weren't the only ones. There was also reptiles like turtles, lizards, snakes. All of those reptiles that had lived during the Mesozoic survived that huge KPG extinction and survived in the Cretaceous. So you might be thinking, well, how do we get snakes? Lizards are actually the ancestors of snakes. Snakes are basically just lizards without legs, right? They evolved to no longer need their legs. So their legs got smaller and smaller and smaller until they became just tiny little vestigial legs and eventually were completely lost. Sometimes in snake fossils and snake skeletons, you can actually see tiny little legs that were still around. Right? Even modern snakes, every once in a while, you'll find tiny little legs on them. Reptiles evolved to have no limbs, to have no legs. What's the benefit of a snake of not having legs like a lizard does? Well, we think the evolution of limbless reptiles was probably driven by the habitat that these animals lived in. Remember, the body form that is going to be passed down from generation to generation is the one that's best fit for the current environment. So for example, if a small tetrapod meaning 4 legs, lived in really dense vegetation, that might impede their ability to be able to wiggle through small places, right? Their legs might get tangled up in plants. Also for vertebrates seeking refuge or food in really, really small crevices, right? It might be easier to get into those small crevices if you don't have legs. So, right, looking at the modern day environment and thinking about, well, where snakes live, it makes sense that they don't need legs because that would just get in their way.